大家好，欢迎来到刚刚连线. In this episode, your faithful correspondent Gang will try to explain what keeps on puzzling our own German politicians and media. What on earth is happening in German streets with those mass hygiene demonstrations? Who tried to storm our parliament and why? Why do libertarians, New Agers and neo-Nazis march together alongside ordinary citizens? In a few minutes, I'll open your eyes to some connections between these very unlikely allies and their motives. Easy things first. Hygiene demonstrations is just a nice name for anti-corona restriction demonstrations. All participants, even if arch-enemies in normal life, suddenly collaborate against the government's measures of masks, social distancing or banning mass gatherings. But their motives and their hatred of the system is quite different. Corona is just the immediate cause, not the fundamental reason. What they do have in common, they believe the elites, the up-theirs, the powerful, are using Corona for their purposes, maybe even fabricated it. Now, meet some of the bigger groups and learn their motivations. The title suggests already one thing they have in common, but let's also see where political mistakes prepared the grounds for them. 1. Reichsbürger and neo-Nazis. The very strong presence of neo-Nazis shocked everybody. The most militant group were the Reichsbürger, or citizens of the empire. They argue that after World War I and World War II, no proper peace treaties have ever been signed, and as such, we are still in an armistice, just tolerated by the victorious countries. I don't have the room here to explain deeper, but they are the ones who show the black, white and red flags of Imperial Germany until 1918, want the monarchy back, and forced the entry to the stairs leading up to the Reichstag, the building housing our parliament. Seeing continuity from the emperor over Hitler to today, anti-Semitism and racism are part of their ideology. Yet these Nazis are clamoring for a peace treaty? Yes, because they want to formally conclude the war and make Germany a 100% sovereign nation state. We basically already are. But if you look into small details, for example, when it comes to telecommunications backdoors, there are still Allied privileges. Rings the Huawei bell? During my own lifetime, West German politicians always said that our state was only an interim solution, that we would get a proper new joint constitution once reunited. Later, they simply called Eastern Germany the new provinces. Certainly one reason why Reichsbürger are particularly prevalent in the eastern part today. 2. The AfD party. Our legal right-wing AfD party's first reflex was to clamor for more strict measures. After all, they are the law and order guys. Later, they opportunistically changed course, seeing bigger voter potential in ending the government's actions. The following protesters apparently feel that their cause is more important than not marching alongside the neo-Nazis. 3. Vaccine skeptics. Numerous in Germany are those who live natural lives with biological foods, etc., often vegetarian or vegan diet, and usually opposed to certain Western medicine, which would include a vaccine rollout. Actors, pop stars, New Agers influence this group, usually leaning left in most issues. The polls already show that 40% would refuse to get a vaccination, tendency rising. Even Chancellor Merkel already made clear that no vaccination will be mandatory to calm this large voter group. The spectrum ranges from still unsafe, which is a good point, to outright crazy. Bill Gates will inject us all with a microchip, giving him full control over our health status, and he prepares the extermination of 7 billion people. 4. Libertarians and fiscal conservatives. Libertarians want a lean state and to give the individual maximum freedom. But currently, governments around the world amass huge additional debts to be paid by future generations. This is to plug the holes in the economy which the COVID restrictions widened more than the pandemic itself. This group fears socialism through the back door. It is true that the world was already so indebted before COVID that a way out without currency and sovereign debt crisis seemed mathematically almost impossible. Now, irresponsible politicians can conveniently blame it on COVID. Never let a good crisis go to waste, is an old adage. Libertarians favor higher responsibilities by the individual. But here, German politicians made a huge mistake, endemic in our federal structure. Take an example from between the lockdowns. In one province, 10 people could assemble, in another, not far away, 5,000. Don't ask me what the appropriate number should be, but the population will be impossible to discipline if, on the one side of the street, your right is 500 times greater than on the other. You need apps to keep on top of what you can do in which place, and it changes all the time. How to take it seriously? 5. I lost track. Ordinary citizens and a cocktail of motivations from above. Many citizens today think the restrictions are exaggerated, don't work, or have too many side effects. But there's one more major point. Government explained that the central reason for the measures was to flatten the curve. Statistically, we could afford up to 80,000 new infections per day before the hospitals overflow. The first peak was at 7,000, then it fell to 500. It seemed fair to say that goal has been overachieved with a big margin, so let's ease up. Our politicians neither ease much, nor do they explain why they changed the strategy or to what. I understand how exponential functions can get out of control in a heartbeat, but the average Joe and Jane feels cheated. Even now, when numbers shot up to around 20,000. At the same time, in several cities, tens of thousands demonstrated against lockdowns, vaccination and other restrictions. The same is true with masks. As long as too few were available, we were told they don't work at all anyhow. Now we get more and more mandatory mask areas. This bad communication might be the single biggest reason for all the conspiracy theories. Some individuals or groups just cleverly exploit this uneasy feeling for personal gain. Lessons. Policymakers should explain their actions. If their opinions change, for example, they get better information, they should explain that too, starting with what they didn't know before and what they learned since. Inconsistent actions and information gaps would otherwise be explained by malicious conspiracy theories. Consistency is also needed over space, not only time. Local egoisms should be thrown overboard for the greater good. For decades, our politicians have emphasized the individual rights. In many situations, that's great. In a pandemic or similar crisis, it backfires. Granting liberties is much easier than to take them away. No government can only count on the capacity of sound, informed judgment by the masses. Now, it's up to you to connect the pieces. 再见。